Guided Annotation Part 3, Lewes prompt.
Moving into the next paragraph, a little longer. My consciousness is not of the triumphant kind your generous joy on my behalf leads you to imagine. All right. Exultation is a dream before achievement and rarely comes after. Is a dream before achievement and rarely comes after. Let's unpack these a little bit. My consciousness, it's a little bit like her attitude, her outlook, her perspective is not of the triumphant kind. And let's substitute maybe a more common modern word, confident. My attitude is not of the confident kind your generous joy on my behalf leads you to imagine. In other words, you think I'm more triumphant, more confident than I actually am. You flatter me. Thanks for the nice words. Exultation is a dream before achievement and rarely comes after. So she has achieved as a writer. So the idea of exulting or celebrating your achievements, that's just something you dream about before you actually have those achievements as a writer or anything else. And she's also saying that that kind of exultation, and maybe we'll substitute a word here, celebration would work. That celebration, maybe even after you've achieved something, maybe after Marion Evans Lewes has written something successful. It even doesn't really, that celebration doesn't happen after very commonly as well. It sounds like what's going on here already is that talking about the development of a writer, Miss Lewes is saying that you don't always get a chance to enjoy your successes. You don't always get to exult after your achievement, which might come as a disappointment to her audience, but it sounds like Miss Lewes is being pretty honest. And so there's an authenticity to this letter. What comes after is rather, or instead, the sense that the work has been produced within one, like offspring, developing and growing by some force of which one's own life has only served as a vehicle, and that what is left of oneself is only a poor husk. Interesting image there. The idea of a poor husk or a shell that's left behind, where whatever was inside is used up, or if it's an animal that has shed its skin, there's been a transformation. Something's left behind after you've gotten to a certain new stage. So she's using some imagery here, some sort of maternal imagery in a way, not in the nurturing maternal sense, but more in the sense of, she mentions offspring, growing, developing, gestates in the womb and has the children, and then though life is enriched by that, has fulfilled a sort of very fundamental biological purpose. So there's an analogy here, an extended set of metaphors to children, I'll just say, and the different stages. To have a child and to go through all that is a sort of a miraculous and mysterious process. It's also just plain exhausting. So there's this sense maybe of the creative process, according to Lewes, having a similar effect, where it is enriching and enlightening and rewarding, but also, boy, you're just exhausted afterward. Again, this is back to the honesty aspect. And because I've mentioned that a couple times, that Lewes is being honest and authentic, I'm going to just kind of come back up here and make a little note. Honesty. Honesty on the part of the speaker. She's not just saying anything. Besides, the vision of something that life might be, and that one's own ignorance and incompleteness have hindered it from being, presses more and more as time advances. The only problem for us, the only hope, is to try and unite the utmost activity with the utmost resignation. Does this seem melancholy? I think it is less melancholy than any sort of self-flattery. Alrighty, so a few things here. She mentions how the creative process, writing in this case, it really takes a lot out of you. However, it is still satisfying. It still is functioning to the best of your talents. And she has to ask herself, is that resignation or that surrender, is that enough to make the entire thing worth it? Maybe it is, maybe it isn't. So in terms of her technical use here of the writing, she poses a question and answers it, so that might be worth noting. Poses a question. She goes on to answer it too. Does this seem melancholy? Is this a depressing or sad reality about the development of a writer? Well, she says it doesn't seem really sad. It's not as sad as somebody who goes around and self-flatters or let me use a substitution term here, self-flattery or self-delusion, the idea that if you flatter yourself, you're kind of deluding yourself and maybe tricking yourself into thinking that something is true about yourself or about your writing that's not exactly true. So again, the only hope is to try and unite the utmost activity with the utmost surrender. So just like the person who, the woman that gives birth and has children and that wonderful event, still they have kind of surrendered a part of themselves for that. And it doesn't seem sad, as sad as self-flattery. All right, so the purpose of this paragraph seems to have been to approach with an honest tone, to use some of her analogies to suggest that the development of a writer means that you give something of yourself that maybe you don't get back, but much like a woman who gives birth to children, it has that deep satisfaction.